I'm Peggy Morocco, and welcome to my virtual classroom. For today's lesson, we will learn about buyers who cheat on eBay. The topics that will be discussed in this lesson include return policies, opening up a separate checking account, horror stories, using the term mint condition, being careful when corresponding through emails, and PayPal's Seller Protection Program and what is not covered. I've been selling on eBay for almost 10 years now, but when I first got started, I learned some hard lessons when shipping my items. Sellers sometimes encounter cheaters on eBay, and even PayPal's protection policy will not help them. With our tough economic times, some buyers are cheating to gain profit when purchasing items on eBay. Now, this has not happened to me that often, but it does happen at times. And when this does happen, you, as a seller, need to be prepared. There may come a time where you might sell an item which the buyer wishes to return, in spite of your auction saying no returns. Is eBay really only a venue between the buyer and the seller? If your auction is a legal and binding contract, which eBay says it is, between the buyer and the seller only, can eBay intervene on behalf of the buyer and change your contract? Yes. Many sellers have come across situations whereby PayPal intervenes and refunds the buyer's money in spite of the auction saying no returns. Better yet, buyers may pay with their credit cards and avoid and override PayPal's lengthy disputes completely, leaving the seller totally and completely helpless. Buyers can file a dispute and can return the item as long as they have delivery confirmation proof, and chances are PayPal will remove the money from the seller's account and refund the buyer. If you don't have enough money in your PayPal account, PayPal will go to the account that you originally gave them when you first opened up your PayPal account and remove your money from your bank, and there is nothing you can do about it. Now, this has caused a huge problem for sellers in the past because there are some cheaters on eBay. The buyer can basically return anything to the seller, and just because the buyer has delivery confirmation, PayPal will refund the money to the buyer. And there is nothing the seller can do if the buyer shows that something with a delivery confirmation was in fact returned to the seller. This is why it is so important to open up a separate checking account for your eBay business. If you find that a dispute has been filed against you and you don't want that money being drawn from your personal account and risk the chance of bouncing checks or not having enough money for your house payment or your car payment, then you need to open up a separate checking account, even at a different bank. Now let's discuss some perfect examples of the many different types of cheaters on eBay. Let's talk about the holiday user. We all know how important it is to sell a holiday item by listing this item prior to the holiday season, but what happens when buyers buy the item and return the item after the holiday? A buyer may want to use an item for the holiday, but then returns the item after the holiday is over. Once the buyer shows PayPal the item was returned by proof of delivery confirmation, PayPal removes the money from the seller's account, and the seller is left with an item that cannot be sold until the following year. Now let's talk about the slick buyer. Another unfortunate circumstance occurs when the buyer has an identical item that you have listed and chooses to buy your unbroken item because theirs is broken. The buyer may or may not take insurance, and when your good item arrives, the buyer simply takes their broken item and replaces it for yours and mails you back the broken item. They now have an unbroken item and maybe even get to claim insurance on the broken item, resulting in getting their money back. The next thing we're going to talk about is stealing by swapping. My friend had a horrible experience with some record albums that she sold a couple of years ago. A dealer spotted these albums and paid her over $250 through an auction. The auction ended. She collected the money from PayPal and mailed out the albums to the buyer. When the buyer received the albums, he emailed her and told her they were not mint albums. She emailed him back and said, well, they were in near mint condition. He said he wanted a refund and he'd return the albums, and he was going to contact his credit card company because that's the way he paid for these albums. His credit card company told him to mail back the albums as long as he had a delivery confirmation, and once he had proof, they would credit his money back into his credit card account. He did just that, except when my friend opened the albums that were returned to her, she was shocked to find that the albums that were returned were not her albums at all. The albums this buyer returned to her were mildewed and moldy. She lost her albums and her money as well. But guess who was selling mint condition albums on eBay the next week? Yes, the buyer. My friend's first mistake was emailing the buyer and saying that the records were near mint. Well, this indicated that she was lying about placing the mint condition phrase in the description. This gave the buyer complete paper proof that she lied. She should have either placed near mint condition in the description or never emailed him saying that they were near mint. Her email was all the proof he needed to show that she was lying, when in fact she was the perfect seller set up for a scam. Now, there are many ways a seller can protect themselves, and these are my suggestions for sellers. Suggestion number 1. Instead of offering no returns, accept returns with exchanges only for other merchandise you have up for sale. Remember to place a stipulation that states that all postage and handling will be the responsibility of the buyer going to and from. Number 2, open up a separate checking account for your eBay business. If you find that a dispute has been filed against you, you don't want that money being drawn from your personal account and risk the chance of bouncing checks or not having enough money for your house payment or your car payment. 3. Be careful when stating in an auction that an item is in mint condition. You are better off stating that an item is in near mint condition and avoid conflict in the future. 4. Be careful what you write in emails. Emails are written proof and can easily be used against you in disputes, even if you're innocent. Always be courteous. If you find a problem with an item right before you're about to mail that item and you didn't place that problem in the auction description, then don't mail it. Contact the buyer and tell the buyer what you discovered. Don't try and fix the item and then mail it, or the buyer may think you're trying to pull a fast one on them, and then they'll get angered. If you are selling a delicate item, always place insurance is required in your auction. This will avoid any problems on your part should the buyer decide to return their broken item. I hope you enjoyed your virtual online class given to you through pegslearningcenter.com, and make sure that you sign up for one of the live virtual classes where you will hear me live and see my screen on your computer screen. Thanks for stopping in, and have a wonderful and prosperous adventure while selling on eBay.